Hello and welcome to the Grizzled Warmaster, and today we're going to take a look at the new Lumineth Warscrolls, specifically focusing on heroes. I'm going to split the Warscrolls up into a couple of different videos, because I think it's to dive deep into them with 11 new Warscrolls, would have been kind of a long video to do them all. But I really wanted to hit the heroes first because I think they have some very interesting new abilities and some hits and misses. So let's go ahead and dive in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the heroes in the ascending order of how good I think they are. So I'm going to start with the most disappointing or the least good in my opinion, and work up to the best. So first on our list is the Venari Bannerblade. This is a big old swing and a miss. I'm not really. The model's awesome. He looks super cool, but just a 5-wound hero is a little squishy, even with a 3-up save. If he's close to techless or somebody throwing out a protection of Ish, he becomes a little more durable. However, he's a combat hero who needs to be in combat to get the most out of him. So you can see the banner gives a +1 bravery to the bravery characteristics of friendly Lumineth Realm-lords who are wholly within 18 inches of the banner blade. So he's pretty good in that sense. He's got a pretty big bubble. But +1 really is not going to do a lot. What you really want is the +3, but to get that, he has to be within 3 inches of any enemy units, rather than people being engaged. So you got to get him up at the front lines where he's going to get whacked pretty quick. So you're probably only going to get that +3 for maybe 1 round. And the other ability of the banner, which is once per battle, is you can hit everybody within 18, all enemies within 18 inches with some mortal wounds if you roll equal to or less than the current battle round, which means it is unlikely to do much of anything until round 3. The likelihood that this guy is going to be around until 3 is pretty low. He does have a sun metal weapon. He hits pretty well. Wounds okay, -1, 1 damage. He's all right, and he is one of the cheaper heroes at 110 points. So if you just really need to have a hero and you're scrimping on points, you might take him. But actually, the next person on our list would be a better option for those 100 points, or those 110 points. Actually, this guy's a little cheaper at 100 points. Let's go ahead and go on to the Cenari Calagrave. This is a one that he looks super cool. I was really excited about him, and again, kind of disappointing. He's one of those guys that they tried to do. I don't know what they were trying to do with this guy. He is cheap, 100 points, but he looks it. 5 wounds with a 5-up save is really squishy. For some reason, his Calagrave blade has a 3-inch range on it, with D3 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 D3 damage. Somewhat typical for wizards, the D3 damage weapon. So I'm not sure what the 3-inch blade, the 3-inch range on it. It obviously didn't affect his points value, because 100-point wizard of any type is pretty good for a lot of things, especially with the number of buffs he's going to get and what the Cenari keyword does. But let's look at his abilities. And I'm going to go in reverse order. He's a level 1 mage, so he knows Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and the Erasure spell, which is kind of dumb. It is essentially just another way to get an Arcane Bolt into your list, because you are almost never going to use the Erasure, the mark for Erasure ability. Basically, you got a casting value of 7. You pick an enemy hero within 24 inches, which is good. It's good range on it. And you can either inflict D3 wounds on that hero or mark them for erasure. So it's one or the other. However, if that hero has already been marked for erasure, you can instead deal D6 mortal wounds, and then the mark goes away. So you have the option of casting, doing nothing, and then next turn do D6 mortal wounds, or just do a D3 each time, so that in the end you're doing 2 D3 mortal wounds, so 2 to 6 instead of 1 to 6 mortal wounds. So it just makes zero sense why the spell is just badly written. But let's look at his Realm Scribe ability. And again, I guess for a 100-point hero, you can't balk at this too much. But basically, once per battle in your hero phase, instead of attempting to cast a spell, which is kind of a bummer, you have to give up at any spells. So even if you are, say, the general who has magic, the silver wand, or you're on you're on the Balewind Vortex or something like that, and you could cast more than one spell. Nope, you have to give them all up to use this ability. You roll dice. It's not even for sure. Add the number of the current battle round to the roll, and then on a 5+, pick a point anywhere on the battlefield. For the rest of the battle, do not take battle shock tests for friendly Lumineth Realm-lords that are wholly within 9 inches of the point, and add 1 to casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls for friendly Lumineth wizards that are within 9 inches of the point. Okay. That's a kind of a cool buff that in round 1, you're only going to get a third of the time, then up to a half of the time. So it's not even a sure thing. And again, a 5 wound wizard with 5 up saves. Unless you've got some Blade Lords near you. This guy's not going to be around for this to be very reliable. So again, in my opinion, kind of a big miss. All right. Next on our list is Lyrial Uthral, the Warden of Geometrica. And I did cut off his keywords just to be able to see all of his abilities. Now I questioned this when I was talking about his reveals, that I was going to have a problem if he did not have additional attacks. Well, he does. He has a Regent sword and then the horns and claws of his mounts. And that actually makes him a relatively killy character. For characters. A lot of characters, even when they are quote-unquote combat characters, aren't super killy. His Regent sword does benefit from Sun Metal Weapon, which is pretty cool. He has the Demon Blade, can be used as a ranged weapon. It's got that nice, not -2 rend. It's better against demons, chaos demons. So that's cool. I like the Purist Aether Quartz ability. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target this model, and add 1 to their casting rolls as long as they haven't used their Aether Quartz. And the great thing is this guy could still benefit from Lookout Sir, so he could be -2 to hit. So that's pretty cool. Adds to his survivability. He's got the 3-up armor save, which is okay. With 6 wounds, hopefully he would be within somebody's aura to get the 5-up feel no pain. So that could make him pretty tanky. So -2 to hit, 6 wounds, 3-up save. I like that durability. His spell is okay. The big thing about it is the only power of Hish spell that can target somebody other than themselves. So while the D3 is unreliable, he's likely to get himself and maybe one other person. It is still a way for a unit who failed to cast it on themselves to be able to get it onto themselves, or to be able to get the power of Hish. So that's kind of cool. What makes me kind of put this guy lower on the list is he's from Geometrica, which is just dumb. I don't know why. There's a couple other the twins. They also hail from Geometrica, as does the Underworlds team. the Cenari from the Underworlds, she also is from Geometrica. And Geometrica is the Alarith city. So, and literally all of their stuff benefits the Alarith and nobody else. So if you wanted to take a Geometrica army, these guys would gain no benefits from the abilities from that city, which is kind of trash. So I don't like it in that sense. And his 210 point price tag is pretty big for this army. It's tough to, because he's essentially the same price as, he's a little cheaper, 10 points cheaper, I think, than the Light of Eltharion. He does a lot different things than the Light of Eltharion, but with the Lore of Wind ability to teleport and be able to get the Light of Eltharion right in your opponent's face, I probably would want to spend the extra 10 points and get Light of Eltharion instead of this dude. Not saying he's bad, and I could definitely see taking him, well, one, in an army where you aren't going to take Teclis, so that Voice of Tyrion power would come into play. I would especially see taking him in a Cities of Sigmar army for your, Settlers Gain city, or as an ally in any other army where you just want somebody who's pretty hitty, and you want to be able to reliably get an extra command point every time because the army that you want to play with is starved for command points. So in that sense, he could be good. Like I said, I think I would consider playing him in a Settlers Gain army where it doesn't matter that the Geometrica thing's not a big deal. He would still get the Cities of Sigmar keyword, just not the Settlers Gain keyword. So that would be good. I don't play Cities of Sigmar, so I'm not particularly sure how having the Cities of Sigmar keyword would help him, but I'm sure it would. So anyways, so he was the next lowest on my list. Now, from this point forward, I'm pretty much good. There's guys that I'm like, okay, I could see having this in a regular Lumineth's list. They're tough. Lumineth are struggling for points because they are such an expensive, elite army. But some of these were definitely could be worth their points depending on the build you're going for. So next we have the Venari Lord Regent. He is a considerable discount from your specialist character. He's 60 points off. You lose some hitting power, but you get that greater power of his spell, which is really awesome. You get that Purest Aether Quartz, again, pretty awesome because this guy can be just as tanky as the named character. You lose what you lose is a little bit of damage, which you don't really want these guys on the front line anyways. They could be a good, late game, hitting power. But really what you want them for is that greater power of Hish. So, he could be really good for that. And he's a cheaper, 150 points can be, do I want that or do I not? But I could see him in certain armies. I would especially take if you were trying to build an army that did not have Teclis in it. That you're like, okay, I'm going to replace Teclis with, 3 other heroes and, maybe buff up some units. In that case, I could really see taking this guy. All right, next let's look at the Huracan Wind Mage. This guy is a relatively cheap wizard at 120 points. He's got a great move, 16. 5 wounds and 5 up saves, kind of squishy. His weapons, okay, 3 inch range, which is weird. 2 attacks, 3s, -1, D3, pretty typical of a lot of wizards nowadays. He's got his Fan of Redirection, which is kind of cool, give him +1 saves versus missile weapons. So if you gave him something else, maybe you I don't think you'd put him on the Balewind Vortex because he wouldn't get to move. Likewise, you probably wouldn't want to put him in the inside the Endless Spell or put him on the terrain piece where he'd be treated as a garrison either way. giving a -1 to hit and a +1 to save, but you could consider that. I do like the thing, especially since you're probably going to fly this up with your other forward-moving troops, like your Kangaroo Riders, the Wind Riders, I think they're called. I forget what they're called right now, but or with your Spirits of the Wind. If you got him up front, then you might be more likely to be able to use the second half of that, which is if you make a save roll, an unmodified save roll of a 6, then you can do a mortal wound to an enemy unit within 9 inches. You basically slap the missile weapon back at him, which that's kind of cool. It's a +1 save, really. That's all. The other one's just a kind of woo. If you remember that you have this ability in the rare instance where it happens, cool. He's got the Wind Leap ability, which is Wind Chargers. There we go, Wind Chargers that are that start their move wholly within 6 inches of this model, are treated as having a move characteristics of 16, and they can fly. And then we saw there's a command trait, which you'll never take because you're never not going to be in a city, that you can broaden that range to basically all Wind Chargers within 24 inches, or wholly within 24 inches of the general if he was a Wind Mage. Probably never going to do that. And then his spell's not great. He's a level 1 wizard. Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, Wind Blast, Vortex. Casts on a 5, you pick an enemy within 9 inches, and on a 2-up, you do D3 mortal wounds. Yeah, so it's a crappier Arcane Bolt. It's half the range, and you have to roll for it, so it's kind of stupid. But you're never going to cast that spell because the Lore of Wind is just so good. Almost every spell in that lore is going to have some sort of use to it, especially the teleport spell. So if you don't have Techless in your army, you will definitely want a Wind Mage. And even if you do have Techless, you may still want a Wind Mage to make sure you have somebody who can cast that teleport spell. Because I think, that's probably going to be the go-to spell for everybody. But, alright, let's move along to Alania and Elethor, the Eclipsean War Sages. These are named characters, and they are pricey at 260 points. They are really good, though, in my opinion. They've got 8 wounds, 3+ save. It's not on here, but they are Cenari because Alania is a Cenari, which means if you want to run these guys with some Blade Lords, you can give them 10 extra wounds, which is nice. And keep them alive a little longer. So Alania gets +1 to cast, Dispel, and Unbind because she's, Techless's prodigy there. She's got the aspect of Selenar. They can be included as an ally in any army that has an Order General, regardless of whether those guys normally team up with Lumineth, which most armies don't now. In addition, if this model is within 3 inches of your general, and that could be in a Lumineth army, you receive an extra command point on a 4-up, which is cool. We already saw the abilities of Eltari. The big thing is its damage goes up every round. So it starts off in round 1 doing 1 damage, round 2, 2 damage. Whatever the round is, that's what its damage is. What we didn't see was their sudden translocation ability, which is kind of wild, but kind of cool at the same time. Basically, at the end of the combat phase, roll a dice if this model fought in that phase. If the roll is less than the number of the current battle round, so it will never go off on turn 1, and then it gets progressively more likely. Oh, it's equal to, or no, roll is less than the current, or less than the number of wounds allocated to this model. So actually, the more they get hurt, the more likely this will trigger as well. So if you roll less than one of those two things, you heal the model of D6 wounds, and then you remove it from the battlefield, and then set it up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 12 inches from any enemy models. If this is impossible, this model is removed, but it doesn't count as being slain. It's highly unlikely that would ever be impossible. In fact, based on the way this is worded currently, if they don't FAQ it or anything, if they fought in the combat phase and they wiped out the enemy they were fighting, and then you rolled less than the current round or the current number of wounds they've taken, they would heal. You would remove them from the field, and then you could set them up in exactly the same place they were before, because there would be no, assuming there were no enemies within 12 inches because they killed them all, you would be able to put them right back where they were. So you could keep them close to their bodyguards if they still had bodyguards at that point. So, cool. And then they are a wizard, a level 2 wizard, which is cool. Salvation of Hysh is awesome because it is a 5-up damage prevention roll that is specific to this model, so it can be cast in addition to Protection of Teclis or the Protection of Hysh, whichever has been cast, so they could leave the range of it. So that gives them a cool expansion. I believe these guys take from the normal lore. They are not a Wind Mage or a Stone Mage. They can't take from those other ones, so they would take their the spell they know from that other spell, which would be, there are lots of cool options in that too. So again, do I think these guys are going to be taken very often? No, probably not. Again, maybe more likely to be taken in a non-Lumineth list, but I could see if you wanted to take a real combat-focused Lumineth list, you might take these guys with a unit of 5 Blade Lords and run them up the field. I think that could be very cool. Again, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, they are from Geometrica, so they have that. So they will not benefit from the other keywords that if you take a different city, which you are 90% likely to do. So, and even if you didn't, even if you took them in a Geometrica list, nothing in Geometrica really helps them. But all right, and then finally, the cream of the crop, the clear winner in this book, the Cenari Lore Seeker. This guy is amazing. He is awesome. He's kind of expensive at 160 points, but totally worth it in my opinion. He's a little tankier than some of the other Cenari, with a 6 wounds and a 4-up save, but that reflects his the fact that he's running around on his own. And this is the guy I was worried about. When they try and make somebody both combat oriented and magic oriented, I think that often suffers. But I like the way this guy is structured. So let's go ahead and go through what he's got. He's got his Eclipsean Staff, which is a ranged weapon. 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, -2 D3 damage. So that's pretty good. You're likely to get one hit through and do that D3 damage. And maybe you'll do better. Maybe, we'll see. His Lore Seeker's Blade, 1-inch range, which is funny because so many of the other mages have 3-inch ranges on their weapons, which are also blades or fans or whatever. So I'm not sure. But anyways, 4 attacks, 2s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 D3 damage. So pretty reliable hitting there. But his special abilities are what make him cool. Lore Seeker. If an enemy model that bears an artifact of power is slain within 3 inches of any friendly models with this ability, you receive a command point. Not highly likely, but possible. So that's a cool little bonus. The Lone Agent is what's super cool about this guy. You add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target this model if it is more than 9 inches from any friendly models. So he's got a 3-up as long as there are no friendly models within 9 inches of him, which is pretty awesome. In addition, instead of setting up this model on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it is set up as a Lone Agent reserve unit. If you do so at the start of the first battle round before determining who has the first turn, you must set up this model on the battlefield anywhere that is more than 3 inches from any enemy units and not in your territory. That's super cool. And I'm going to get to the last part here in a minute, but I want to talk about this 3-inch rule first. This is amazing. This is an amazing ability. You do have to set this up before you determine who is going first. So now you will know who is outdropped who. So you know if you get the choice. So if you know you're going first, you could set this guy up to assassinate somebody. You set him up 3 inches away from a key hero. You set him up 3 inches away from, a key unit that needs to do damage that you can lock up and maybe take some of that hitting power away. Think about fighting another Lumineth army and going, oh yeah, I'm going to set this guy up 3 inches away from your sentinels and go wreck their day. Not only cut down on their ability to cast, to cause damage, but then make them shoot at me the next round. So that could be very cool. If you know that your opponent's going to get the choice, you can think about, like, do I want to force them to take the first turn and deal with this and then be in a position where they can't really take advantage of first turn and, by moving into position, making them hang out back in their territory to deal with this guy, or at least some key units hang back to take care of this guy, to give you some advantage. That the ability to make your opponent think about that, or ability to have that, is really cool. Alternatively, if you set up this model within 6 inches of an objective that has no enemy units within 6 inches of it, you gain control of that objective, and your opponent cannot gain control of it while this model is within 6 inches of it. This could be a game-winning move. By setting this guy up on an objective, like a super critical objective that the enemy isn't near yet, taking control of that, and then holding it with this guy. Now, you could say, well, look, he's going to, they'll be able to take him off eventually. They'll be able to kill him. He's not that tanky. He could be. If you teleported 5 or 10 Blade Lords around him, yes, he loses that +1 to his saves, but that doesn't matter. Now he's getting -1 to hit because he's within 3 inches of a unit of 3 or more models, so he's harder to hit. They can tank wounds for him because he's a Cenari. It's just, you could essentially camp an objective and make your opponent go, am I going to spend a lot of resources digging that guy off of this objective? Or am I just going to ignore him and, give up that objective? Which could, really limit your opponent's ability to play to a mission, play to a scenario. And remember, you could, because he's a wizard, he doesn't have a built-in spell, which is okay, but you could, again, throw into your list something like the Sanctum and go, all right, I'm -1 to hit and another +1 to save, so I'm at a 2-up save, -1 to hit, and then if I get into trouble, I can teleport some Blade Lords over there to help me out. Or there's just so much you could do with this guy that I just love the ability he gives you to really kind of dictate the flow of the first couple rounds of a game. And I mean, I would personally, depending on the scenario, if it's a scenario that has 4 or 5 objectives, think about I can't remember what the one was that has the 5 I think it's focal points, that has the 5 objectives. One's in the center and then the 2 apart from each other. Think about throwing this guy into the middle of the board and surrounding him with Blade Lords and going, doesn't matter if you throw 40 skinks on here or you come up with a Mega Gargant. It doesn't matter. I control it until you can kill this guy off of it. And I've got 10, 20 extra wounds. That could be massive, because that's 2 extra points. You just, every turn that they don't even have access to until they chip away through all of that armor. So Anyways, guys, there's my look at the heroes from the new release and my initial impressions on how good I think they are, how you might be able to use them in some armies. Coming up, I will go into the other Warscrolls. I'll touch on all of them, but my next video will focus primarily on the Huracan units, because I think there's some cool play there, because I think I just noticed that those wind chargers are battle line in a Helen, whatever, one of the new city, or one of the new great nations makes them battle line. So I could certainly see a list. I'm gonna have to kind of play around with it, but I can see a list that is primarily revolves around Huracan units. Maybe it has one unit of wardens with a unit of sentinels to provide some fire support, some backfield fire support, but is primarily then about, Spirits of the Wind, Severith. I think that guy's awesome. The Wind Chargers are awesome. Yeah, there's a lot that you can do. I'm very impressed with and pleased with what I'm seeing from this new battle tome. I don't think, I think there's a lot of people out there whining, and I'm going to cover this now. There's a lot of people out there whining about how, especially the Lore of the Winds, can shut down what other people do. Well, and I guess the Lumineth in general have the ability to shut your enemies down. They can make command points. You have to spend 2 command points to use a command ability. You are -2 bravery. You can't move unless you roll over your bravery on 2d6. Or now with the Lore of the Winds, there's one that's like, you can't spend command points for a particular unit. And they're like, oh, they can do everything, blah, blah, blah. They can do just about anything, but they can't do everything. You have to kind of pick a direction you're going to go. And yes, if you take Teclis, you have a massive 22 spells to call upon to go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I can pivot strategy, but he can still only cast 4 spells at max. And one of them is always spoken for. So yeah, 3, he can reliably get off 3 spells that are probably going to mess your day, but he's 660 points. He's a big target. So you still have to play smart with that. And that's the thing with the Lumineth. They are going to be a tactician's army. They are not plug and play. I guess you could just take, like I showed in another video, you could take just wardens and sentinels and try and dominate with the mortal wound shooting, which could do really well. But I think there are a lot of, especially meta armies, that are going to be able to weather that and nuke that and really ruin your day. So you got to be careful with that. And you see this guy, this Lore Seeker right here. If your opponent has a Lore Seeker, he can go, you know what? Now I'm gonna make you focus on me, or your sentinels are all gonna get wrecked. I'm gonna charge in there and wreck your sentinels. But who knows? There's a lot to be played around with. Yes, I think these guys are a top tier army. I do not think they are going to break the game and nobody can compete with them. That's not going to be the case. They are very expensive, point wise. They are a very expensive elite army. So they could struggle with the scenario. So you just got to play the game, play the scenario. Don't worry about, trading blows with them. Try and, play smart. But we'll see. I'm excited that things are kind of coming out of the end times, and we might actually see some real battles with these guys. I'm looking forward to getting mine and getting them painted up, and hopefully Mike and I can play a few games and see how they really perform. But thanks for tuning in, guys. Let me know what you think about my list. Do you agree with the order I put them in? Did you see something in one of the ones that I didn't think was that great? And you're like, oh, wait, but in this situation, this guy could be totally awesome. Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. I hope they have some play. And I can see I'm going to buy the Banner Blade. He looks awesome. And I'll probably play him in a casual game just to see how he plays. I just don't think he's going to be competitive, if that makes sense. But anyways, thanks for your time, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you would, please share with a friend. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.